Let's jump
Mhm.
off the high dive here. We'll get in there. It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I
All right,
appreciate it.
thank you. I appreciate being here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, you bet. So before we begin our journey into your good work, I want to know this. I always start with this question. 6 years ago, this pandemic changed so much about us. We don't talk about it a lot. How
Mhm.
did you get through that era, and how has it transformed or changed the way that you live and work today?
Yeah, I mean that was a tough time, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's so individual for so many people, and I think that's what we learned, right? Was there's always a yes and, right? Many of us we were still working. I was still deemed medically essential. I was going to the clinic. We just really switched everything into trying to take care of my patients and being safe for my patients. But there were pros, right? We were already outside people, so creating those outside spaces so we could still see, still have community. We camped a lot already. We kind of expanded that out, and but yeah, I think the not talking about it can be really tough for people because everybody's experiences are so different. Our indication usually is to kind of be quiet so that
Yeah.
we don't offend, we don't hurt, which is beautiful. But then if people don't have the time to process or kind of almost get to say, hey, this is where we are now. What was that growth and what was that experience? And I think that can be really harming too. So I
Yeah.
appreciate the question. Yeah.
Yeah, you bet. No, and I think that can be the way for anything in our lives that can be heavy
Mhm.
like that. Because I think the other part of COVID that's interesting from like just talking about it is that we got inundated. And it was like 1 minute we were out of it, and the next minute we were into it. We would be told one thing and then another thing. I think it was one of the most confusing quagmires for our human brains to unravel because it wasn't clear cut. Like 9/11 was pretty clear cut. Well, I
Mhm.
mean, maybe exactly why we went to a country to get retribution was a little foggy,
Yeah.
right? But the
Hmm.
whole idea was pretty clean cut. This
Hmm.
wasn't. This was like, we're going to throw this book where you choose your own adventure, and you
Hmm.
can't do that with a real scenario.
Yeah. And like, I didn't realize being kind of from the background and the training that I've had, I do a lot of risk assessment on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I honestly didn't realize how humans are not very good at assessing our own risk. And in fact, like there's research that shows that, and potentially I'm not even good at assessing risk in an environment that I'm not normally in. And so then we were being sort of the choose your own adventure is a great way to put it. And people weren't really sure what to do with that.
Yeah.
They didn't going into an environment where we weren't really told concrete authoritarian, this is what needs to happen. It was very disconcerting for a lot of people, I think, too.
Yeah, it certainly
Yeah.
was. Well,
Hmm.
let's get into your world of healthcare. I'm going to
Hmm.
put you in front of 13-year-olds at career day, and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you synthesize what you do on a daily basis to make sense to their brains?
So I like to say that I pull people back from the ledge of chaos. I help people rewire their understanding of themselves so that we can then have a greater impact on ourselves and our communities, right? We like to OD a little bit on our anxieties. I shouldn't say like to, that's kind of judgmental, but we're prone to, right? Having sort of this chaos of a world that we're living in. And I kind of help people stop, break, assess, listen, figure out what we need to do so that we can put a better foot forward.
You know, it's interesting. I think about it in relationship to coaching and all of these new modalities that weren't around 20
Mhm.
years ago. There's this more increased notion of when we hit in quotes midlife, whatever that's going to be. They say it's an age, but it's a state of mind. You get
Mhm.
buried. You get buried in relationships. You get buried in kids. You get buried in bills. You get mired in your career. We all are like running to try to keep these things together. But in that process, you lose track of your health. And especially with your health, if you get too far along, you
Mhm.
can't hit rewind. You might be able to with career and say, hey, this is what I really want to do with my life. Great. It's never too late. But with health, it seems like more impending than ever that you tap in to things like vitamins and waters and walking, right? And
Mhm.
cutting fast foods, all of those things that can be a part of like stopping that bullet from coming right at us.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing is that we start to realize that there may not be a fix. when we
Right.
get older. There's a lot of emergency medicine in this world is in the environment that we live in, obviously with a place of privilege, um, is accessible. And we kind of grew up, I think, thinking that it's okay if there's a crisis, if I have a stroke or I have a heart attack, like it can be fixed. And not that they don't do amazing things, but I think COVID it definitely showed us that we didn't always have the answers
Yeah.
and there wasn't always a solution. And twofold, I think it's fascinating, and we've all been there, so this is not from a place of judgment, that we think our bodies are, and our minds, and even our souls are sort of expendable. It's like
Yeah.
we come in and we're like, oh, we just have to go, we have to go. And sometimes we're in a season in life where we're pushing a little harder, and that's okay. So what we have to do to sort of to get through things. But eventually that energy to hold those patterns in place takes too much.
Yep.
And that's when you start to see it in midlife and you're like, well, I can't really do it anymore. Like I thought I could. Um, what I used to do doesn't work anymore. I used to be able to push through myself all the time. I'm not. And it's perceived as sometimes I think a bad thing. And really that's the wisdom in aging that comes out to say, how do we learn to use the different parts of if we're always using our willpower, Eastern medicine, the background that I come from has 5 parts of the psyche. So maybe we actually need to use our vision more. Maybe we need to use our, processing the information more. Um, and how do we start to look at these things differently? But yeah, really our bodies and our minds are our greatest assets, and we treat them often like they're renewable. And they
Yeah.
really kind of are, but
Right.
eventually they're not going to
Yeah,
be.
for sure. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, what did you want to be when you were a kid? When you were 12 or 13, what was your dream job?
Oh my gosh. I've always been in the story world, the caring for people world in a lot of senses, but I actually was going to be a scientist. I was going to be an environmental studies person. Then my undergrad is in costume design. So I went into theater for the stories because I think stories help people heal.
Yeah.
And then eventually I was like, I had a little later in life and I was like, this is not, I'm not in a place where I want to be anymore. I was in corporate management. Like, what if I went back to my roots? What is that? I'm like, well, I want to be able to help people. I want to have an impact in my community. And so I stumbled into Eastern medicine and went back to get my master's and my doctorate and have been here ever since. So, yeah.
It's interesting because we all have to play a role. It's not this level of like being disingenuous, but we all have to play a role. So it might benefit people to take theater for a little while, to know how to slip into that role and to figure
Mhm.
things out because we have to feel all those things like empathy and getting our point
Mhm.
across and those things. Seems like it would be beneficial in anything that you would get into, especially in medicine and
Mhm.
healthcare and mental health. That's probably huge.
Yeah, I think I was just listening to a little talk this morning and we kind of reframed that kind of walk a mile in my shoes idea, right? And you're saying that I I do think when we can start to understand where people come from by playing a role or learning about that, then we do have the ability to kind of take our life with a little bit more grace and ease.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I agree that we see this a lot, maybe in your field as well, where we talk about being the brand, right? A lot of business owners, we're creating our brand, we're doing this, and then we almost lose ourselves in that brand.
Mhm.
And we forget that that is a part of who we are, but it's not all of who we are. So but I certainly wouldn't want to walk into a space and just be rude and say whatever I wanted to say and not have kindness and understanding for those who are in front of me, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So,
Yeah.
who's been that inspiration for you that's allowed you to be in this realm of helping people, of evolving and being somebody that others can rely on to get to a better place in life?
So the one of my teachers now actually I ran into him at a conference, a research conference years ago, and I didn't even know who he was at the time, though he was really big in the field. And he talked about traditions being living and how we are all contributing to the traditions, right? Like I practice, my first background is traditional East Asian medicine. I've built upon that to create these programs, but uh, sometimes that gets stagnant, right? It's 5,000 years old that this is the way it was practiced then. This is, some people are saying this is the way it should be practiced now. And that was really cool to me to think about traditions being living and how do we grow and change and contribute to something. And so, um, that was a big inspiration for how I've practiced and what I've contributed to the field for many years because that was like, oh, it made so much sense to me that like there you can have this sort of abstract and still honor and change at the same time. So
So when you look at the field of medicine, the field of science and healthcare and how we're taking care of ourselves, what do you think has been one of the biggest breakthroughs that you've seen in our lifetime that's helped us find? Because we are technically living longer, where we have different modalities that will help us be healthier. What do you think has been the biggest breakthrough?
I think when people are empowered to ask questions, um, I think from a scientific standpoint, honestly, some of the public health movements that we've had, right? Like if you think about something as simple as iodizing salt,
Yeah,
right? And fortification of foods, which especially in the wellness worlds gets a bad rep. Which if I have a place of eating my fresh foods out of my garden, that of course makes sense, but a lot of people don't have access to that. So delivery of nutrients to people who can't access it, like those are some of the most beautiful movements that we've had. Educational campaigns on people understanding health and well-being. Like there's some stuff that people do in public health that are it's just really fabulous. We've made so many scientific advancements, you know,
yeah.
and now I think, but I do think people understanding the why we do something and then understanding if they think it makes sense for them is really important.
I had a friend about a year or two ago that went to New Delhi, India, and he was telling me the air quality there is unbelievably abhorrent. Like
Mhm.
it's at a point where you have to wear an N95 mask, and in the summer they will close the window and turn the AC on, or even in the spring when you would have your windows open. I mean, they burn things, and it's just really bad. And I was thinking about air quality. We were comparing Kansas City to India, and it was just drastic. And I was
Mhm.
thinking about the Air and Water Act that we passed back in the 60s. Those little
Mhm.
things that have been huge to create
Yeah.
what, I mean, there's a lot of these environmental standards that have been getting dismantled, and they are now. But I think those things that have lasted, that are impenetrable, are huge for providing quality of life for all of us.
Yeah, a lot of us didn't grow up in environments where we saw the reason why that was put into place.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think about like the Chicago River alone, right?
Yeah.
So many rivers used to be on fire because there was so much trash in them.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I hope we never go back to that, right? Those
Right.
environmental, yes, of course we can change how things are processed. We can change how things are fined or adjusted, or does it make, but we want to take care of our environment
Yeah.
and people I think don't think about that, and a lot of times we blame the individual because if we really wanted to be honest, chemicals are really impacting. There's only so much control that we can have,
Yeah. For
on
sure.
an individual level.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now, whether they've recalibrated their life in a positive way or they're a trendsetter in healthcare or science that you could have a lunch with and talk to, is there anybody that you would love to meet and talk to?
Mm. I think the big thing would be to meet and talk to people who make big decisions. Like, can if there's a decision think it's so easy from the outside to say, "Oh, I wouldn't have made that
Uh-huh.
decision," or "Oh my gosh, like, do they not see this one little thing?" Right? I think that I see that a lot in local government.
Yeah.
Right? The more I get involved in it, the more I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like,
Uh-huh.
And so, like, even if you wanted to talk about COVID, like, I'd love to sit down and talk to Fauci and be like, "Okay, how did you make these decisions? What data were you looking at? All of these things," and so that we can start to understand um, the systems and can we do them better? Can we adjust them? You know,
Yeah,
kind of
for
thing.
sure.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. And
Yeah.
we haven't seen anything about Fauci lately. I was just wondering, he's probably in hiding because I'm sure he's been vilified so much. Um,
Yeah.
so let me ask you this. What is the energy for you every day to do this work that changes lives? To be in kind of this evolving, obviously with COVID and everything, we're in this very evolving world of things changing all the time, especially
Mhm.
with AI. That's going to impact everything. But to also take care of your own soul and your family and everything that you have. What is that energy every day to do all of this at a high level?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of gratefulness for me, to be honest,
Yeah,
a lot of intentionality. And I have been so lucky to be in this world of learning all the time.
yeah,
And I feel very passionately that if we can educate, if people can understand their whys and what impacts themselves the most, then we can have that global impact and kind of all come together and for the greater kind of good of communities and stuff like that. So
yeah.
that's really one of my drives is, and plus I'm just kind of lucky. I'm like, oh yeah, I get to meditate for work, or I
Huh?
get to,
Yep,
I get to
absolutely.
talk to people for work. This is really fun. Like, and here's your little stories.
So
So,
what is that saying? If you find what you love to do, you
mhm.
won't work a day in your life. That kind of thing.
I kind of, I mean, I'm acknowledging that it takes a lot of energy to do what I do,
Yeah,
right? Holding space for people. It's, there is a toughness that I think we don't talk about in healthcare as much because we do. Um, so I am also a big vacation person. I'm a
yeah.
big travel person. Like I don't sit there and say, "Oh, well, I'm just going to do this 24/7." I need to create the space for myself as well so that I can show up better for you, you know.
Well, yeah, you would have to protect yourself from all of those things that
Hmm.
become messy with humans because
Hmm.
it can get pretty deep. I just keep thinking about this film I saw the other day with Rainn Wilson. He was a paramedic and he was in an ambulance and he was just talking about everything they have to filter through. And it's
Hmm.
unreal. Like how
Hmm.
you separate the egg and the yolk sometimes
Yeah.
without them coming back together. And it's a lot. There's only so much the human brain can take before it just gets filled up like a cup of
Hmm.
water, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're in such, I mean, that's such a high intensity environment too, that's an outstanding, my brother was a first volunteer first responder firefighter for a while in his town, and the stories that he would tell and just having to kind of almost I think lose yourself a little bit in
Hmm.
order to push through it. And that's
Yep.
the season of life that you're in. And then, of course, what can you do to kind of recover from that is so vital. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's huge. It's
it's
huge.
huge. Yeah.
So when you look back on your life, I'm going to do kind of a reflective here. If you were to have a dream tonight and you ran into the 18-year-old version of you at your age now, and you walked into a room and there was a film projector and you clicked play and the 60-second highlight reel of the life you've lived, the choices you've made came up there, would that young version of you believe that your life turned out this way so far?
I think so, but I think she'd be pretty impressed. She'd be like, oh, okay, I do have the skills and the tenacity to kind of move forward. I'm sure she'd be questioning some of it.
So would you give any advice?
To my 18-year-old self?
Yeah,
Oh man, I think that living, yeah, I would in the sense of like if she could have connected to her gut a little bit more and
yeah.
made clearer decisions and whether it was fail or win, just kind of making choices, making decisions, and being okay with ticking people off and kind of living a little bit stronger.
So let's say you walked into a room of everybody that's known you in a professional sense throughout your career, and you could go to a podium and tell them one fun story about you that would humanize you a little bit. Maybe the first concert you went to, a seminal place you traveled to, jumping out of an airplane, outrunning a crocodile. What would be a fun story, and everybody would see you in a little bit of a different light?
Mhm. So I don't know if I should share this story, but I think the one that would really surprise people is that I used to live out in Virginia. We lived pretty close to the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
And a couple of us decided to go camp on the Appalachian Trail for a couple days, like completely ill prepared. You know, just barely any supplies, which is what they'd be like. I'm kind of a princess now with that stuff, but um, and and it was hilarious because I mean, we were out there by the end. I shoes didn't fit properly, right? I was walking barefoot on the Appalachian Trail. I think we thought we saw a mountain lion. I
Oh
think it was a
no.
wild horse, to be honest, but we ran.
Right. Sure. Yeah. That's awesome. But
Got
it,
off the trail, like everything that you're not supposed to
yeah,
do, we did, and those are we obviously live to tell the story, and you know,
that's the thing. It's all about storytelling. It's a great
yeah.
story now, you know?
Hmm.
So, of everything that you've done in your life, when you look back in the huge rearview mirror of everything, what are you ultimately the happiest about, the proudest of?
I think the relationships I've built, you know, friends, family, community, um, continually trying again. Right? Like, oh man, I could have a bad day, or I could feel like I failed at something, and then still getting up the next day and saying, okay, let's try this differently. What did I learn here? You know.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, Holly, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Mm. Think I'm more human than a lot of people think I am, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's people see this well, maybe not, but I think people see this relatively organized, structured person that does all the things they're supposed to do. And I'm like, oh, I still don't know where my phone is. It's fine.
Yes. So, if anyone out there is ready for the next step, they want to reach out, they have questions, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do they
Mhm.
go? How do they do it?
So I am Holly Battrum on Instagram, LinkedIn, all the socials for the most part, even Pinterest. My website is showcourt.com. So if you can email me Holly at hollybattrum.com. You can find me pretty much anywhere. I would love to hear questions, thoughts, all of those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will put links in the show notes. Holly, thank you so much. Thank you for taking a minute out. Best of luck with everything. This has been wonderful.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it and enjoy it.
You bet. Thank you.